Good afternoon. I'm Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I serve on the House Judiciary Committee Subcommittee Chair of the Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. In addition, I'm a commissioner on the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and have worked extensively as a member of the European Parliamentary Exchange on international issues dealing with Europe. In February of this year, I was in Lithuania when the Russian forces invaded Ukraine. It was only about 10 days before that that Brittney Griner was taken. The notice did not come because the Russians did not notify even the United States. I think that should be made very clear, that we were not, the appropriate persons were not notified. And the initial response was that this was a temporary holding and that she would be released. As a member of the Homeland Security Committee, over the nation's airports, even on international travels, many times contraband or any suggestion of you having food items or what other items are simply taken away. We have no idea what transpired with respect to Brittney Griner, because it should really be known that Brittney Griner lived in Russia for at least 5 to 7 years, playing on a very well-known and very successful basketball team. Basketball in Europe is enormously popular, and they fight over outstanding players. As a WNBA player, you will find that many women basketball players play in Europe or play in Russia. And so the actions taken were enormously suspicious. And from the very beginning, I asked for the State Department to be engaged. I knew that our State Department's engagement would be key to finding out the truth of why Brittney Griner was held. I want the best for these proceedings and negotiations that are continuing to go. And so we want to tomorrow, and we're inviting Houston to show the public support of a hometown student, a person who honed their skills at Nimitz High School as a basketball player, and as well graduated from Baylor University, and has gone on to be an Olympian, and as well to be a renowned member of the WNBA, being first and second in terms of playing and performance in the WNBA. Tomorrow, we invite the community to join us. Basketball players, retired. We will be at the Toyota Center at 6 p.m. I'm delighted to have as my co-collaborators the Honorable Commissioner Rodney Ellis, the Honorable Mayor Sylvester Turner, all of whom will be present, and of course, the President of the NAACP. But the focus is on the people of Houston, her fellow students from Nimitz, and all of you. It is free, and we hope to make it as hospitable as possible. It is in the evening at 6 p.m. We want to accommodate all those who are working, and otherwise, we hope you'll bring your children. Because as we rally to support her, as we explain what it means to not live in a democracy, and how it is important for democracy to embrace one of our fellow Texans, we will then go into a prayer vigil. And we'll be receiving music from some of our renowned musicians in this community, including a video, because she has to be out of town, from Yolanda Adams. We will be listening to prayers from a variety of individuals, and we will do this together as a community. We will do this together as a community. We hope that we will have some greetings from the U.S. Department of State, and as we are speaking, more and more is being added to the program. But I am very excited because of the heroism of this individual, that the Trevor Reed family will be joining us tomorrow. And we are grateful for them, and we are grateful for the courage of Trevor Reed. But this is a community event, and it will not be successful if we do not come together. And let us be thoughtful of the family, and let us be thoughtful of the issue. My final words on this is to explain the difficulty of a legal system that is both complicated and incompatible with issues of justice. We hope the negotiations will continue to bring about success. We hold this rally because we know that there is a pending court date. With that in mind, we want everyone to know that there's no divide between Congress and the administration on fighting for Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan, both of whom are still held. And there are members of Congress, myself, and two others, we'll discuss this further tomorrow, who've introduced legislation. And we want to bring Brittney Griner home immediately. So I thank you very much, and will now ask Commissioner Ellis to come forward and to offer comments about his collaboration on this day. We will follow this with our discussion on the issue of gun violence in America and the issue of guns in Texas right after this. Thank you.
First, I want to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She is always on point and on time. When Brittney Griner was first arrested, she was informed, she and her colleagues, there's a time to lay low and you work the diplomatic channels, and there's a time to ramp it up. It's now time to ramp it up. So it's important for you, the media and your viewers, to show some support for a hometown hero. Brittney Griner and her spouse obviously have been under tremendous pressure. She was one of our own. So it's important to do this here in Houston. It's important, Congresswoman, that you were able to arrange to have it at the Toyota Center. That is just so significant. Mayor Turner will be there. As she said, Bishop Dixon, the head of the NAACP, will be there. Representative Reynolds, other community leaders will be there. So this is a clarion call to the public, saying you come and come with your family. Many years ago, Congresswoman, as a staffer to one of your predecessors, I also know how important public support is. I can remember at a time when most people were critical of it, when Congressman Leland went to Cuba not once but several times. The one trip I went on, he was bringing back someone that one of his Republican colleagues asked him to go and use his relationships in that country to bring this young woman and her boyfriend back to Houston. So it is important. And without the Congresswoman's leadership, we would not be here. She called on short notice, asked the mayor, asked me. We put out a robocall to about 10 or 15,000 households. I think that's going out as we speak. So we need the media to get the word out. And it is important that we also show sensitivity to Paul Whelan and his family as well. He may not be our hometown person, but he's one of ours. He is in America. And it's important to note that even if our country has problems with Russia, for good cause we do, this is the issue that goes beyond governments and disagreements that they have. We're talking about a young woman in the prime of her career being detained in a foreign country. So it's all about bringing Brittney home. So, Congresswoman, thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Representative Reynolds is the vice chair of the the State Black Legislative Caucus, soon to be the chair, and I'd just like him to say a brief word. Then will come the chair of our Free Brittney Committee, Dooney Hebron, and she'll introduce Carl Davis, who is an active member of this committee. Then we will go into the gun issue, and we'll add Mr. Espinoza at that time, and he will be able to speak both in English and Spanish about both issues after the gun presentation. Chairwoman,
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for your enormous leadership. One of the things that I'm so proud of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for doing is to elevate the issue of gun safety and bringing common sense gun reform to Texas through her role as Congresswoman in her role as one of the chairs of the Judiciary Committee. I want to thank you and Chairman Nadler for your tremendous leadership in making sure that that was front and center, because what some people may not realize is that what Governor Abbott failed to mention in his press conference when he was trying to deflect upon New York and LA and Chicago and their gun violence was that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and you know this, that Texas leads the nation over the last decade in mass shootings. We're number one. And what did we do in response to the shooting in El Paso, in Santa Fe, in Sulphur Springs? What did we do the first legislative session after that when they made hopes and prayers and promises to those families? We passed open carry and we passed permitless carry. And so, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you for your leadership in making sure that there will be federal legislation, because until Texas leaders become serious, we won't have it in Texas. We had legislation that the Democrats put forth, we couldn't get passed for red flag laws, okay. And thank you for your leadership in bringing it forth with Brittney Griner. I know that, like my daughter and all the young ladies who look up to her as a sports hero, that we need to make sure that we elevate the call that she be released from Russia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairwoman Hebron.
First, I want to thank Congresswoman Jackson Lee, not only as a lawmaker, but a mother and a historian, for taking the lead since the first day which Brittney Griner was detained in Russia, for fighting to bring her home. We want to bring Brittney home. She's not only a daughter of this city, but she is a well-known and remarkable national figure. Russia is not a place for anyone to be detained, let alone a woman. So we are working alongside with Congresswoman and our leaders in this community to fight and bring in Brittney home. So please join us tomorrow at the Toyota Center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. as we all gather, as Houston gathers, to let their voices be heard, to bring Brittney home. We will be having a rally from 6 to 7, and we will have a prayer vigil from 7 to 8. So please join us, and let us send our voices out so that people can hear us, Russia can hear us, and release our daughter and send her back home to us.
Let us make sure that we keep Brittney and her family in prayer, and let me thank publicly, as I will do, both President Biden and the U.S. Department of State, who have been constantly engaged in this effort for both Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan. It is important to note that both of them have been declared wrongfully detained. They are hostages. And so it is important now for us to be as open with our desire for her to come home and to show the unity not only of this community but of the state of Texas. And that's what we intend to do tomorrow. So thank you all very much for that, and we'll have more to say about the legislation, and there'll be more persons on the program that you will hear from in their commitment and their ability to talk about this important matter. I chair, as I said, the Committee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. It was on this past Thursday that we had a marathon mock-up of the new bill that has packaged some of the best aspects of reasonable gun safety legislation. We started early in the morning and we finished about 12 hours later. It was a contentious markup. That is where you make the bill ready for the floor. But those of us who wish to promote, to honor, to humble ourselves in recognition that there is a war on our children, held our ground. And we chose, sadly, to stand with those dead children who live no more, their legacies, over the really nonsensical argument that this is taking away the Second Amendment. Every member of Congress has no authority to remove the Second Amendment. It is a part of the Constitution, and it remains a part of the Constitution. But we have a responsibility, even according to the Supreme Court, by Justice Scalia in the Heller case, that we are not to be prohibited from addressing dangerous weapons and unusual weapons. And so the bill that we put forward deals with raising the age on possession of automatic weapons. It deals with limiting the munitions that are able to be bought. The perpetrator in Uvalde, 350 pounds of ammunition. It deals with safe storage at the point of sale. So that when you buy a gun, you'll be asked to ensure that you have the devices for storage, keeping them away from a child or a teenager, student that would take that gun and wreak havoc on his community and fellow students, or someone that would run to a medical facility and kill, or go to a grocery store and kill, or kill recklessly, as was done in Philadelphia just 24 hours ago. In addition, to stop gun trafficking. For states that have strong gun laws, New York, Illinois, California, and others, New Jersey, they are the victims of gun trafficking. To have universal background check. And as the grandmother called the police in Uvalde when she saw her grandson run off and had been shot, she had the strength to call the police because he bought those guns on the same day as his 18th birthday. And if there had been a universal background check or a 7-day waiting period, which I am promoting, for automatic weapons, it might have spanned the time past the final closing of the Uvalde school system. Any measure to have saved those babies' lives and those of the teachers and her beloved husband, who now been known to have died of a broken heart. He didn't need to die. His wife, the other teacher, or these children, or the trauma of the survivors, some of whom smeared blood on their bodies to survive. So this is to announce the next steps. We will go back to Washington and vote on this legislation in the House. That's the next step. There will also be a hearing in Washington, listening to the victims of gun violence who lived, the survivors, so that the nation can see that this is not without very strong merit, and that it really is a war on our children and a war on many Americans. We're not at war, but we're in a war because we have no control over the guns that are proliferating in our community. And if anyone recalls the shootout in my congressional district in early January of 2022, where police officers were dealing with a person who had a ghost gun that wounded, and thank God no one died, in terms of our law enforcement. We are banning and restraining ghost guns as well in the Protect Our Kids Act. We expect that bill to be passed before the end of the week. We also expect that then the negotiations in the Senate will intensify because they only have 10 days. But we will find any way to overcome any obstacle in the United States Senate. And then we'll work with the White House for the next steps, because I believe before the end of June, we must pass real gun safety legislation. There is a war on our children. Summer camps are beginning. Summer is beginning. School is not too far off in terms of its beginning. Just imagine what the children of Uvalde are facing, even though they announced that the Robb School would not be a school in the fall. I was in Uvalde last Sunday, and there were adults that were crying, but there were children that were crying. 9, 11, 13, they were crying. Memories that they will have for the rest of their life. Families that will never be the same for the rest of their life. So I want very briefly for Commissioner Ellis to be able to indicate the work that the County Commissioners Court is doing with Judge Hidalgo and other members, Commissioner Garcia and the other members, to recognize that local government is also a part of the effort. I do want to make the point that I have made in the hearing room on the record. Texas has no gun laws. It doesn't have red flags or court order by way of due process. It doesn't have a waiting period. It has open carry. It doesn't have an age limit on what guns you can buy. The one law that the governor was able to tout, which is of no consequence, is that you cannot have guns on a school. And then you have someone saying, well, let's arm the teachers. Well, in Texas, it says you can't carry a gun on a school campus. But it has no laws that would have helped save those babies. A simple waiting period, 7 days for automatic weapons, could have stopped, as I said, Salvador. A red flag law might have been able to be implemented in his 18th birthday if there were signs of his misdeeds, and there were. There were. So I am stunned that I am confronting this in our state, which urges me even more to inform all of you that we will be on the floor voting for Protect Our Kids. We'll hold hearings, and we will push the Senate for their proposal, because one or the other will have to be on the president's desk. And we will find a way for that to be on the president's desk to save lives and to begin to end the war on our children in their own country. Just as someone said, defenseless and innocent. They died in the place that should be one of the safest places they could ever be. The legislation was introduced by myself, Chairman Nadler, and Chairman Thompson. 3 of us introduced this legislation this past week, and it is now ready to go to the floor of the House. Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Congresswoman. At Commissioners Court at our last meeting, Judge Hidalgo, Commissioner Garcia, and I voted in support of a resolution asking that our federal government pass the very reasonable measures that Congresswoman Jackson Lee just alluded to. We also had language in it asking our state partners to step up and do their job. And if not, to give us, on the local level, the ability to do that. We have no ability to do that. Congresswoman, I neglected to mention earlier with regard to Brittney Griner, this will be the first public rally in the nation. It's appropriate that you called it, by the way, and that it be in her hometown. We just left a church service, and I want to stress how important it is for us to always offer thoughts and prayers. But there's a time when that becomes hollow. And for the governor of Texas, the lieutenant governor, the people who run the state, every time there's a tragic shooting like this, and they offer thoughts and prayers is meaningless. I stated a couple of weeks ago, with all due respect, they ought to keep their thoughts and prayers, and they ought to pray for themselves, that they be forgiven for having the power to do something and doing nothing. In Texas, nada. All of us ought to be embarrassed. This is a federal issue, and it begs out for federal legislation. Congresswoman made reference earlier to, we know the world's not flat, but when it comes to issues like this, it is flat. What good would it be to have responsible gun control measures in New York, and you can't even keep the pandemic in a given state? Everything crosses the borders. Our neighbors to the south.
That's right.
The drugs come up because of the market here. The guns go down because everybody has access to one here. I'm for hunting. I'm not a big hunter, but when I've gone, I've enjoyed it. If you need an AK-47 to hunt, you're blind. I mean, that's a weapon of mass destruction. So, Congresswoman, thank you. I just want to stress it is a federal issue. Would anybody say the Second Amendment says individuals ought to be able to get atomic weapons? Or we ought to have any other weapon of mass? Can we get tanks? That's ridiculous. So, look, I hope now is the time. It's going to take pressure. And people like this Congresswoman raising hell and embarrassing them. So thank you for your leadership.
That kind of support is especially important to us. Thank you, Commissioner Ellis, to us. And let me just, as I bring up Cesar Espinoza, to indicate that now we have reached a point where homicides is the #1 killer of our children, not car accidents as have been in the past, but it is, unfortunately, the idea of guns. We are also going to work very hard this week. It's only 5 days to put an assault weapons ban on the floor of the House. Let me be very clear. The assault weapons ban has a number of listed weapons that are banned. It has 30 to 40 pages of automatic weapons, including a Ruger, that are not banned. We should understand that are not banned. So it is wrong to represent that we are taking away every automatic weapon. The writers of the legislation were careful to get a few absolutely killer weapons, like an AR-15 style weapon, off the streets, but there are 40 pages of weapons not banned. And so for those, we would hope for a 7-day waiting period. And then, as the chair of a subcommittee, we know that people are hurting in Uvalde. We will respect that they are hurting. But we know that we need to bring a congressional hearing to Texas so that we can hear the people speak. And we will be respectful, and it will be in time that is respectful to the mourning, the hurt, and the pain that is in this state right now. Let me ask, as we all know, the persons killed were Hispanic. Persons killed in El Paso were Hispanic. Persons killed in Buffalo were black. But the persons killed in Sulphur Springs at a church were not black or Hispanic. And so it's the world of people from all over that are being the victims and survivors of gun violence. When will the nation wake up? And when will the nation choose humanity, choose courage, and choose action? When will our elected officials, who are the public servants and the doers of the word of our constituents, choose humanity, courage, and action? I've already chosen to accept that at this time. Mr. Espinoza.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. We want to number one, express our full support for the event tomorrow. We want everybody to come out. This is not for a single community, but rather all Houston to come out and in one single voice say that we want Brittney back. She is one of our own, and we want to make sure that as one of our own, we protect her and we bring her back. So, primero queremos expresar nuestro apoyo total para el evento que va a ocurrir mañana a las 6 de la tarde en Toyota Center. Queremos invitar a que la comunidad sea partícipe, porque ella es una persona de Houston y queremos que Houston le demuestre su apoyo a ella y demuestre que estamos aquí para ella y para traerla de regreso. Va a ser a las 6 de la tarde en el Toyota Center y les pedimos que vengan. Es un evento familiar para que vengan y primero sean parte del evento y después sean parte de la vigilia que va a ocurrir también mañana. So, y también vamos a estar participando por Paul Whelan para que también a él se regrese, aunque no es del área de Houston, es importante que lo regresen aquí a los Estados Unidos. On the second thing, which is gun violence, our community is still rattled by the events that happened in Uvalde. Many parents have called us already expressing fear of returning their kids to school the next school year. And the question that we must all ask ourselves is why? Why must parents live in fear? Why should the kids live in fear? A few days after we had the vigil just outside of this building, I was talking to my 16-year-old sister, and she was telling me that they have active shooter drills at the school. And she says that they don't know when they're going to happen, and they just happen, and at some point they don't even know if it's a real active shooter or if it's just a drill. So why should my 16-year-old sister, my kid, and other kids have to live in this constant fear? There's a saying in Spanish that says, el que nada debe nada teme. He who does not owe anything shouldn't fear anything. So why are people so afraid to undergo background checks? Why are they so afraid to be responsible gun owners? And that's a question that we posed to the NRA last week, and that is a question that we will be expressing every time, whether it's a congressional hearing, whether it's in D.C., whether it's on the streets, we will be expressing that thought. Muy importante que nuestra comunidad todavía está sufriendo de los efectos que pasó en Uvalde. Hay mucha preocupación en la comunidad, mucha preocupación inclusive de familias que no saben y si el retorno a la escuela del año que viene van a regresar a la escuela o si se los van a mantener en la casa. Y los padres no tienen que vivir en ese miedo. Los padres deberíamos de vivir con la seguridad que si nuestros hijos van a la escuela, van a regresar. Sean la parte, una de las cosas que se propone en el bill que está ofreciendo la congresista Sheila Jackson Lee es que haya responsabilidad, que se responsabilice a las personas que tienen armas para que sean portadores de armas, pero que sean responsables con el cargamento que ellos llevan. Y como dice el dicho, el que nada debe, nada teme. Si no tienen nada que temer, ¿por qué tienen tanto miedo a que se les cuestione su involucramiento en crímenes pasados o que se les haga algún tipo de licencia para portar armas? Estamos aquí, le queremos agradecer a la congresista Sheila Jackson Lee por su liderazgo y de nuevo ya está trabajando en Washington D.C. por las familias latinas, por las familias afroamericanas, por todas las familias que viven en Houston. And we want to thank you for always stepping up for communities of color, for our communities, for your district, and for the entire city of Houston.
We'll take questions in a minute. We'll ask Mr. Davis to speak to the importance of the prayer vigil for this community and the bringing together of religious leaders.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for all your efforts and your leadership in trying to bring Brittney Griner home. As you said that on tomorrow at the Toyota Center there will be prayer vigil. We're issuing a call to all pastors you know that prayer does work. And as I was reflecting, it's grandparents' prayers who has lifted those young people up. And I know that whether to bring them forward through toil, through troubles that they have experienced. And we are asking all pastors, ministers from around this city, let's stand united on tomorrow with Congresswoman Lee as we pray. We pray to bring Brittney Griner home. It will take all of us working together as one. And again, thank you, Congresswoman Lee, for your outstanding leadership, along with Commissioner Ellis, who was here early, and State Representative Ron Reynolds. That's federal government, state government, and county government working together as one. Thank you.
Let me conclude by thanking the lead conveners of the Brittney Griner support rally and prayer vigil, that is both Commissioner Ellis, Mayor Turner, and as well joining me is the President of the NAACP, Bishop James Dixon. Let me thank those who are here, Mr. Carl Davis, who is assisting as a member of the Free Brittney Griner Committee on the prayer vigil. Let me thank Representative Ron Reynolds, the Vice Chair of the State Black Legislative Caucus, that have been leaders on the issues of voting rights and gun safety. Thank him for that and his presence here to support Brittney Griner. Let me thank Commissioner Ellis, Rodney Ellis, who is here, and also the Commissioner's Court work in supporting us as we go back to Washington, meeting members of Congress, supporting us as we go back to Washington for this very life-changing work. We thank Cesar Espinoza, who I know will be hearing from just continuously those who have been impacted, the survivors, and we thank Fial for his work. We thank the chairwoman of the Free Brittney Griner Committee, Dooney Hebram. This is a task force that came together quickly because we knew that the silence needed to be broken by the sincerity of Houstonians and those of religious leaders. And that's what we intend to do, and do it in its right and proper order for tomorrow. Again, at the Toyota Center in the plaza, plenty of water, 6 p.m., corner of Polk and LaBranch. We look forward to seeing you there as a showing of support for, again, our hometown girl, Brittney Griner. Any questions?
If Brittney Griner isn't released before and has to go through this legal process, what is your biggest concern with having to go through the legal process over there?
Well, I want to be respectful. Right now, Russia is obviously in a raging war against a country that has Western ideals and beliefs. It is a democracy. It leans toward the Western allies, Ukraine. The contrast is that you could go through a system in a country like Ukraine and expect to be heard and that justice would be rendered on the facts or the law. We are completely in the dark as to the legal system that may exist in Russia. It is evident by the hostages that are still there. Paul Whelan has been to court and has not been able to make his case of innocence. Mr. Reed had been to court, was not able to make his case of innocence. And so we don't have any basis of belief that there is a system that you can be heard, and that when you are heard that you'll be given the fairness of innocent until proven guilty. And there are many aspects of the case that shows that there was an intention to remove Brittney Griner from the airport and to now make her, as been declared by the United States State Department, a hostage. So I'm not really keen on that system working. I would hope that we continue to work with Russia and recognize what system they have. I hope Russia will continue to work with us. And there are many options that are still on the table for both Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan.
As someone who's on the Homeland Security Committee, can you speak about any community? I know you said you guys are in the dark with legally how it's working over there, but any communication whatsoever that you can speak of that you know of?
Well, I'm going to be generic and say there were communications last week, and we're waiting to get a report from those communications. They were not judicial or legal communications. They were face-to-face dialogue on how we can bring her home. And we're going to continue to look at those options. Again, she's been declared a hostage. The person that is in charge is the hostage negotiator out of the State Department. That is important and a big deal. We wish that wasn't the case. But those negotiations will go on outside of any legal issues and cases that may be in the future.
And you mentioned the Reed family is going to be there. Can you talk about the significance of that being there?
Well, I want to respect them and say that we are humbled. We're absolutely humbled. It is enormously significant. I had the privilege of working with them before their son was released. Their deep passion for America is without question. And their love of America and their love of all the hostages that are there. When they were speaking for their loved one, they spoke for Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan. And I will say this tomorrow, Paul Whelan's sister that is in New England said that she is praying for Brittney Griner to be released, and we are praying for Paul Whelan to be released, that they're all there. And we know that we're pushing them forward for the United States to put them at the very front of their efforts. So it is a humbling experience to know that someone who has been previously held, and none of us can stand in those shoes, none of us could even imagine, will come to stand with this community regarding a Houstonian who is now held hostage, and that we will not leave out Paul Whelan, who has been there really for a very long time. We think tomorrow we'll hear more about these issues. Well, thank you so very much. It's a Sunday afternoon. We can't do anything. Again, let me just say Brittney Griner support rally and prayer vigil, the great wealth of support that we've gotten. We're excited about it. Obviously, athletes are scattered across the nation, but the players that are coming, we're excited about. The contributions of our young people that are going to be present, we're excited about it because it's going to bring our community together. And that's what we're going to do tomorrow. We're going to be together tomorrow at 6 p.m. Toyota Center. With my Spanish, it'll be mi casa es su casa. My house is your house. I need you there tomorrow, 6 p.m. Toyota Center, La Branch and Polk. Thank you so very much. For Brittney Griner.